Hey, well, welcome to today's Lunch and Learn. This is very exciting to be here and streaming live to Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube simultaneously. So it's pretty cool. I haven't done this before, although I have taught this particular class many times before. So it's pretty exciting to be here and sharing it with you today. So if you are catching this live, then please let me know what platform you're watching on. I'm very curious about that. And also where you are in the world. For those of you who might not know who I am coming to you from a rather wet and soggy New Zealand at the moment. But do let me know what platform you're watching on and whereabouts in the world you are. And if you're watching the replay, then feel free to join in and leave your comments on that too. You know, what platform did you catch the replay on and whereabouts in the world are you? These sessions are a chance for me to share some of the tools that I use commonly with clients and some of the practices and conversations that we have that really seem to deeply resonate with my clients. And I'll be sharing more sessions in the coming weeks, and I really hope that you will join me on those as well. So why learn from me? And nice to see that we've got some people watching from LinkedIn. We've got someone on Facebook. So welcome Maribel, welcome Penny. Great to have you here. So why learn from me? Well, I have more than 15 years in the personal development industry. I am globally accredited by the International Coaching Federation for my coaching skills and also for the programs that I teach. I have more than 10,000 hours of client coaching experience and training in a whole host of different tools and modalities, including professional coaching, neuroscience, neuro-linguistic programming, cognitive behavior coaching, solutions-focused coaching, embraining, heart coherence, loads and loads and loads of things. I am also the coach that other coaches seek out to upskill, and some of them you might have heard of. So very privileged to be in that space and being sought out by some of the highest performing coaches in the industry right now. And also deeply honoured and grateful to have been approached to be the programme director at Coaching Evolved, which is a really leading edge coach training provider founded by the Emmy Award winning Natalie MacNeil, who is also my dear friend. And before all of that, I created a company culture in my engineering career that won external awards, and I've been featured in countless media outlets and podcasts. So hopefully I have something that will be useful for you today. And welcome, Claudette. Lovely that you're joining us on LinkedIn. So the last time that I taught this class publicly like this was almost exactly 2 years ago, just at the very start of the pandemic, and we had all been thrown into lockdown. I'm sure that's something that we can all remember vividly. So I want to take you back to that moment just for a minute or two. Imagine this. It was 3 days into the first lockdown, and I was standing in the middle of my kitchen with my mouth just gaping. I had just witnessed the most amazing exchange between my then 15-year-old and my husband. So what had started out as a really simple statement that my daughter was like, "I'm going to bake a cake," had degenerated into like an all-out verbal war, door slamming, eyes rolling, screams, accusations, threats, the whole thing, all in a matter of seconds. I mean, it was like watching pro wrestling or something. It was impressive. So there I am, standing in the middle of the kitchen, suddenly on my own, having gone from excitedly planning what the next 4 weeks were going to look like and how we were going to bond as a family and how amazing it was going to be to have all this extended family time right at a time when our kids are getting a little bit older and beginning to stretch their wings a little bit, to boom, like standing in the middle of the floor like I'd just been spun by a Tasmanian devil. That's what it felt like, wondering what on earth had just happened. And the thing is that that moment in time was really, really stressful. I think it was really stressful for everybody. We didn't know what was going on. And stress looks different for everyone. My husband was really stressed because he didn't know what lockdown was going to mean for his business. My daughter was really stressed because she couldn't see her friends and she was really worried about the coronavirus and what that actually meant if she got it. And all of this stress is just bubbling under the surface of the superficial actions that we are moving through day to day. So when my daughter announced that she was taking over the kitchen to bake a cake, and let's be honest, when my kids bake, they take over the kitchen. What my husband was thinking had nothing to do with the baking, but the fact that there were a lot of things that felt out of control, and this felt like something else that was out of control. And so he made a comment that ignited this fire in my stressed out teenager, and ignition. So you see, our ability to process information is compromised by up to 80% when we're under stress. 80%, it's huge. And another way of thinking about that is like it's like going back down 4 educational grade levels. So I like to think of that as going from degree level education back to sort of primary school thinking. So that's the kind of difference that we are talking about in our capacity to think and adapt. So thinking about that, what would that mean for you when you're trying to be creative or innovative, or even just trying to solve the problem that caused you to feel stressed in the first place? What does it mean for your customers, your team members, your friends and family? Because how we self-manage is really the key to becoming the best leader of yourself, the best influencer of others, the best person that you can be. And being the best leader or influencer or thought leader is how you can positively impact the world and leave a legacy that is really timeless, whilst also living a bold technicolor life. And if you've been in my orbit for any length of time, you'll know that I'm really passionate about that my latest book is all about stepping into being the leader of your technicolor life. In other words, just being 100% you as you lead. And let me be very clear, we are all leaders in our lives. And being a leader means that you're going to be thrust into these stressful situations quite often. And it's how you respond to those situations that is going to determine your success. So let's take a look at how we're going to flow today. We're going to unpack some of what makes up the way that we manage stress by really getting to know what's going on under the hood. I said in some of the promo for this session that this presentation is not about getting sleep, healthy eating, and exercise, all of which are very great tools for managing stress. But today we're really going under the hood of what stress is, how to work with it, and instead of trying to eliminate it. And we're going to look at it from a far more embodied perspective rather than just a cognitive one. So get ready to feel the feels today. So we're going to go through 3 stages: the success link, looking at why we react differently to each other in stressful situations. Mind the gap. I love this as an idea of identifying your unique stress pattern so that you can identify it sooner. And taking the power back over negative emotions. So that's what we're going to cover in today's session. You see, we are all being bombarded by information all of the time. But I don't mean information like emails, social media, news, advertising, all of that kind of thing. What I mean is that we're being bombarded by sensory-based information. So at any given time, we are consciously, but more often subconsciously, assessing our surroundings to make sure that we're safe. It all comes down to safety. And we do that through our senses, through our bodies. It's not something that we need to think about. Yeah. So we're constantly assessing things like, what's that noise? What was that movement that I caught out of my eye? Is it too hot? Is it too cold? How does that taste? Is it safe? Is it poisonous? Constantly assessing our surroundings for safety. And because we're being bombarded by way more information than we could possibly handle at any given moment, we are making a huge number of judgments at the same time. So we're constantly deleting, distorting, or greatly generalizing the information just so that we can keep on top of it. But how do we know what to keep, what to delete, what to distort, and what to generalize? Well, we do that through a number of filters. So we have a whole number of filters that all of this information gets thrown through to decide what ends up in what bucket at the end. So one of our filters is values. So our values being what's most important to us, our priorities, our motivating factors. That's one of the filters that we use. Our belief system, what we believe about certain situations or people, is another filter that we use to make these judgments. We've got a filter based on our memories, and memories are not always to be relied on, as I am discovering more and more. But we still use our memories to base some of those judgments. We can use a filter of past decisions or experiences. Taking the output of previous experiences is a way that we quickly filter information into each of those buckets. And we have a filter of strategies. Now, I'm going to come back to strategies in a moment because it is a very interesting filter and it's interesting to think about, especially in the context of stress. So I'm going to come back and spend a little bit of time on strategies in a moment. But let's take a look at this filtering process in a little bit more detail. So I actually really love this diagram, even though there's a lot of information on it. I still think it's a very useful tool. And if any of you are familiar with NLP, then this will be familiar to you as well. So moving through this diagram from right to left, external event just means a moment in time. So it can be a triggering event, or it can just be taking a snapshot in time. And then we look into these filters. So the filters are deleting, generalizing, and distorting all of the information that we are gathering. And we do that through values, beliefs, decisions, and memories. Now, in this diagram, there is this filter called meta programs. Meta programs is just another word for strategies for the purposes of this class. So we can swap out meta programs for strategies, which I'm going to come back to. So the result of that filtering process, we take in all of this information, we run it through our filters, and then there is going to be an output of that filtering process, some of which we might be consciously aware of, and some of which we will not be consciously aware of. Okay, so that output then moves into this relationship on the left-hand side of our diagram. So internal representation, state, and physiology. some complicated terms for things that I think we can simplify. So internal representation means how we make sense of information. And for the vast majority of us, that means a picture in our mind. So the vast majority of us think in pictures. We make meaning of information by taking the information and then creating an image in our mind. Not everybody does that though. So if you don't make meaning of the world through imagery, then there's nothing wrong with you. It's just you are a little bit special, because most people think in pictures. So you might, if I say something like, think of a yellow lemon, then most people will get an image of a yellow lemon in their mind and they can describe it. But some people might get a sense of the words yellow lemon. They might see the words in color or not. Or some people might get a sense of saliva in their mouth. They might actually almost taste the lemon. So there are different ways that we can code this internal representation. But for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to refer to that as the pictures in our mind. So we get an image. Then state is how we feel. So that is the mood that we might be in or the feelings that we're experiencing. So state is our mood. And then physiology is our body language. It's how we're holding our bodies. And the interesting thing about these three items is that they are inextricably linked. So the relationship between those three is connected. If you change one, the others must change. So, for example, if you are thinking about a particular situation and you're getting an image in your head and it's making you feel bad, you might notice that your body language indicates that as well. Like your head might be down, your eye position is down, your shoulders might be hunched. Whereas if you then move your body and look up, it's harder to access that particular image and it's easier to access more positive images because of that link. And that's going to make you feel different. So this is I get really excited about teaching this piece because I feel like it's a key to unlock a lot of potential in us. Knowing this, knowing that, yeah, I can be feeling really awful. And, how am I going to change that? Well, I can change it just by moving my body. Sometimes that's the easiest way to change it. Or I can notice that my body language is not supporting feeling confident. So I can change that and it's going to change the way I feel, which is going to change the images that I access and the thinking that I'm doing. So why this is important is that the output of that relationship determines our behavior or what we're going to do next. And it's our behavior that leads to our results. So if we want to change our results, then we need to change what we're doing. And we can change what we're doing by understanding this relationship. So if you're watching this, even if you're watching the replay, then go ahead and give me a little comment in the comments about, does this make sense? Are you as excited about this as I am? And as we move on, and feel free to ask questions in the comments if you're watching live as well. So taking this and simplifying it somewhat, but staying with the core idea that this relationship of linking thoughts, how we think about something, the images, our feelings, how we feel about that, and behavior, and really seeing how that plays out. Here's just one example. So, and we can start anywhere in this segment. We can start anywhere in this circle. So if we're feeling less than, if we're feeling like we're not good enough, the chances are that we're going to be thinking that we need to do everything so perfectly. It's got to be perfect. And that's a really high bar to set. So that might lead to the behavior of procrastination or waiting until you think everything is perfect before taking that next step in your goal, your dream, your vision, or not sharing your ideas or playing it safe. But similarly, we can jump into any of these segments. And if you start by procrastinating and waiting until everything is perfect and not sharing your ideas and playing it safe, that's going to lead to feeling not good enough, which is going to lead to I must do everything perfectly. So it's a loop. And so this relationship of everything is connected. If you change one, the others must change. And again, I find that the easiest way to do that, if you want to change your results, you need to change your behavior. So to change your behavior, you either change your thinking, your feelings, or your physical body. And in my experience, it's easier to change your physical body first and let that change the way that you feel and what you think about. So I invite you to play with that. I want to come back to this filter of strategies because it's another really interesting one. And thanks for the comments in the chat. Okay, we have a strategy for everything that we do. We have got a strategy for getting out of bed in the morning. We've got a strategy for getting dressed. We've got have you ever tried to shower differently? Like, we've got a system. We go in and we shower the way that we shower. And if you try and do it in a different order, it feels weird. It feels really strange. So we've got a strategy for making a purchase. There is a process that we each go through when we are deciding to make a purchase. So we've got a strategy for everything that we do. And we even have a strategy for getting stressed. And that's the strategy that I want to talk about in today's session is we have a strategy for getting stressed. But remember, the output of all of these filters, so even if, let's put it this way, let's imagine that we're all in the same situation. We go to an event or a party or something. We all travel there together in the same way. We eat the same food. We listen to the same music. We have the same conversations. We literally, in essence, we are having exactly the same experience. But because of the way that we filter all of the information that we're being exposed to in that experience through our values, through our beliefs, through our memories, decisions, and our strategies, the output is going to be completely different. So that's why you can go to an event with someone and you might have a great time and they might go, oh, that was awful, what a waste of my time. Because we're filtering all the information through a different set of values, beliefs, memories, decisions, strategies, our filters. So every one of us is having a completely unique experience, and it means that sadly, we all have completely unique strategies for getting stressed and dealing with feelings. Otherwise, this could be a really short session because I could just give you a checklist and say, just look out for these things and you'll be fine. But unfortunately, or for my, I find this stuff very, very interesting. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So we're using our filters to code our experiences. And what I mean by coding our experiences is that we're attaching our own unique meaning to every experience that we have. And we have a feeling attached to that meaning. So let me ask you this. How are you feeling right now? So please pop that in the chat as well if you're watching it. And even if you're watching the replay, please put some comments in the chat. How are you feeling right now? Because some of you might be feeling really engaged and you're like, this is really interesting. Whoa. And you're giving it meaning and purpose of being energized, and you're engaged and you're interested and you're like, give me more, this is awesome. But some of you might be not so engaged and you're attaching the meaning that, yeah, this doesn't really apply to me. So the feeling that you might be having is, yeah, I'm a bit ambivalent. I'm maybe even frustrated. I thought this was going to be something else, or just not feeling like, engaging or being part of the conversation. So go ahead and let me know how you're feeling in the chat. Claudia is feeling curious, which is one of my favorite things to feel. So you now see that we've got this filtering process. It spits out some information, we then code it, we make meaning of it, and then we have a feeling about what we're making meaning of. Because coming back to this loop, the feelings and the meanings that we attach to them are going to determine what you do next. And it's that action that you take that is going to determine your results. So let's come back to this idea that we have our own unique strategy for getting stressed, because most conflict comes from stress. And one really important aspect of personal leadership, in fact, possibly the most important aspect of personal leadership, is keeping calm so that you can make good decisions. Because remember, stress can cause your ability to process information to be compromised by up to 80%. So even if you have the best information, without a cool head to process it, you can make really bad decisions. And often we don't know that we're stressed until it's too late. So we're already in that primary school level of thinking. And that's because, or I believe that's because, we haven't been taught to really pay attention to what's going on in our bodies. We have been socialized in cultures that put a lot of emphasis on cognitive ability and intellect, and less on really identifying the messages that our bodies are sending. So how I like to think about this is like a toddler in the supermarket. So imagine, if you can, mum and toddler in the supermarket, and they're in the middle of the produce aisle, and mum bumps into her friend and they start catching up. And after a minute or two, the toddler starts to get bored and begins to say, Mom, Mom, Mom. But mum continues on with her conversation, right? She hasn't seen her friend in a while. So after getting no response, then the toddler might increase her volume a little bit. So it's starting to get like, Mom, Mom, Mom. But mum still continues to talk with her friend. They're talking about concern that they have for another friend in their circle, right? So it's important. It's an important conversation. So next, the toddler starts to get a bit more urgent and starts to go, Mom, Mom, Mom. But mum, she's continuing. She's aware. She's just trying to finish up. But the toddler now is going hard out for attention. She's tugging on mum's legs. She's trying to climb up mum and, screaming for attention. Still nothing. So the toddler's stress levels are through the roof, drops to the floor and starts to thrash and wail in an all-out tantrum. Mum looks around and goes, how on earth did that happen? It's the same thing with our stress strategy. First, there are the whispers that something needs our attention. And if we ignore those whispers, they begin to get louder. And if we ignore them again, they get louder still, and louder and louder and louder, until we're having the physical equivalent of a toddler tantrum. And that can be really scary. If any of you have ever found yourself in a real stress situation or panic situation, it's terrifying. And we've all heard anecdotes of people taking themselves off to hospital and thinking they're having a heart attack, when actually it's a a panic attack or a stress response. So I wanted to dig into this a little bit more as well to try and create a bit more space. Remember the mind the gap, trying to create a little bit more space so that we've got more time to respond rather than reacting. So thinking about a time when you felt really, really stressed. And I use this example because most people can imagine a time where they've experienced this. So thinking about some of the physical symptoms that you experienced, and if you're watching, then feel free to drop some in the comments. What are some of the physical symptoms that you experience when you're like at that I am really, really stressed situation? And I will share some that are commonly shared with me when I ask this, and I've asked it of thousands of people over the years. But there are some really common ones. That increased heart rate, palpitations even, nausea, pain in various parts of the body, clenched jaw, shallow breath, that sense of panic attacks, feeling really tired. There's digestive issues. There are lots of eye pain, clenched fists. There are loads and loads of physical symptoms that happen when we're really, really stressed. And none of that really sounds like a party, okay? And when you're dealing with those kinds of symptoms, how able are you to make the best decisions? In fact, feeling like this, feeling these symptoms can lead you to making decisions that actually sabotage your success. They don't shape it. And the problem is that we've spent years or even decades disconnecting our minds from our bodies so that we don't hear the first whispers that something needs our attention. We only start to listen when the symptoms are really scary and we're in a state of stress that has our ability to make good decisions and process information severely compromised. But we can change it. But why would we? What would happen if we could hear those messages sooner? Any ideas? If we were able to identify those symptoms, those feelings sooner or earlier, then doesn't that give us a sense of control, more choice in what we're going to do next, and that calmness that we're searching for to be the best leader that we can be? Bearing in mind that when I say leader, I mean leader of ourselves. This is personal leadership that then we can expand out into leading others. So yeah, Ali, the symptoms are familiar. Yeah, so you can break the cycle and think more clearly to respond rather than reacting. So let's go back to this for just a moment. If we could quickly change this, well, I reckon I've got some magic here. So let's change the way that we describe this scenario to ourselves. Right? So instead of telling ourselves, I'm really stressed, because that's really the narrative that is going on in our head. That's what we're hearing. It's like, oh, I'm really stressed. Oh, I'm really stressed. Oh, I'm really, really stressed. Oh, I'm really stressed. Instead of that being the narrative and the dialogue that we're hearing, what if it was, I notice that I'm feeling stress. What's different? I notice that I'm feeling stress in my body. I notice that I'm feeling some of those scary symptoms. What's different? And again, if you're watching and you've got an idea and you want to drop it in the chat, then please do that, because this is important. All we've done is changed one word. We've gone from I'm really stressed to I am feeling stress. Doesn't that give you that sense of it not being all you now, it not being internal. It feels like it's something external that you can control, that you have more choice over. And doesn't that just bring everything down a notch so that you can feel calmer? So a few really of my favorite concepts to introduce in today's lunch and learn if you are in the part of the world that I'm in. So let's just review some of the things that we've covered off today. Let me just click on a couple of things, check the chat. Very good. So some of the things that we've covered that are really important, and hopefully you will be able to take away from this short session. First of all, stress can compromise our ability to process information by up to 80%. So the time that we most need to have all our functioning capacity is the time where we are likely most depleted. The next thing, we are all having a completely unique experience based on the way that we filter the information around us. Leading on from that, the relationship between our thinking, feelings, and physiology are all inextricably linked. When one changes, the others must change as well. So if you want to change your results, you need to change your behavior. And in order to do that, you need to change this relationship between thoughts, feelings, and physiology. The sooner that you can hear the whispers that your body is sending, the lesser impact stressful situations will have on you. So when you can rewind that process of going, oh my God, my heart is beating out of my chest, thinking about, well, what happened before that? And with practice, on reflection, you might be able to answer that question. Oh, well, yeah, right before I noticed that, I noticed that, there was a flush of heat, but I just dismissed it. Or I noticed that, I had been clenching my jaw, but, I just dismissed that. So asking yourself that question, what happened right before that, starts to rewind your stress strategy so that you can identify it a lot earlier in the process. And noticing those symptoms and going, oh, I noticed that I'm experiencing feelings of stress, will help you to lengthen that out and notice it earlier and earlier and earlier. The way that we talk to ourselves has a direct impact on how we feel in our bodies. Language is so powerful, and if you change the way that you speak to yourselves, it can radically change the way that we feel. And these are all ideas that we talk about deeply in the Purple Hair Revolution. And the Purple Hair Revolution is my 12-week coaching and training program that really aims to revolutionize the way that you feel about yourself and empower you to step into your Technicolor life. So if you're interested in going a lot deeper into some of these concepts, then go ahead and click over to lorrainehamilton.net/purple-hair-revolution, and all the information is there for you to take a look at. Now, I would love to answer any questions that you might have on any of this. It's some powerful concepts that we have whipped through in quite a short space of time. So very happy to take questions. And also, if you are here watching live, then let me know what you're taking away from this today. Has it been worthwhile? Has it been a worthwhile 40 minutes of your time? And what is I don't want to restrict you to one thing, but what are you taking away from today's discussion? So any questions you have, and what you're taking away. And you can still play along if you're watching the replay. I would love to have your comments, and I'll certainly circle back and answer questions. Always good to tag me in the comments if you can, and I will certainly come back and answer your questions. In the meantime, do click on over to lorrainehamilton.net and check out the Purple Hair Revolution and everything that that has to offer. And as I say, I will be back with more of these sessions in the coming weeks. Next week, we're going to be talking all about self-sabotage, which is something that my clients are very familiar with and something that I talk about a lot with them. So thank you, Claudette, for your comment. That this was very insightful. I'm so happy to have had you here live with me, as well as Ali, Penny, Maribel, and anyone else who popped on and I didn't manage to catch you. Ali, thank you. Definitely biggest takeaway to be more mindful of what my body is telling me when it's whispering, not screaming. Yeah, so that you can respond earlier. That practice is a game changer. And I don't want to minimize how challenging it can be, especially in the beginning. We're so used to ignore that it feels as if we go from zero to these really scary symptoms with no time flat. And it feels like there's no gap, right? It just feels like I've gone from being fine to 0 to 100 in no time flat. So it can be really challenging and confronting to think that there may be other steps on the way. And that is a very common presentation of this, that we've been taught. I mean, how many times have we been told to just push through, to just get on with it, to not feel? That's certainly been my narrative, is, you know, don't feel that, just keep going. And so we've had a lifetime of that to now unravel by, and I'm saying, no, do feel these things. Do sit after the fact, because in the moment it's not possible. But after the fact, when you have come back to a place of calm, come back and go, okay, so that was a bit scary. That was really uncomfortable. But what happened before it got really uncomfortable? And I'm always amazed that people have got an answer to that question when I ask it. They go, oh, well, actually, I had this kind of tingling in my fingers, or I noticed that my foot was tapping. Or I had one lady who said, she goes, oh, my ears tickle. I'm like, well, I would take that over feeling like my heart was beating out of my chest. I would quite happily have my ears tickling as an indicator that there might be something that needs my attention. So yeah, please play with that and let me know how you get on. And oh, we have another one. Where has my cursor landed? Interesting. There we go. So another one from Claudette, thank you. So changing my thoughts is something I do need to work on. I don't have to do everything perfectly. Yeah. It's a really common thing in the people that I work with, and how they have been brought up. And I think this is something that I'm very passionate about in my work with women, and the way that we've been socialized growing up, that we do need to be perfect and we need to please other people, and we're often looking for that external validation from things, and that puts us in a place of feeling out of control, because feeling that we need external validation but we don't know who's going to be judging us leads us down this path of perfectionism. Like, I don't know if I'm going to put something out there and it's not perfect, then somebody's going to judge me, and then what's that going to say about me? And we have all of this conditioning that really pushes us, particularly as women. So perfectionism and the feeling that we need to do things perfectly, I'd love for you to think about, where does that stem from, and what would be different if you were happy with it, and getting really clear on what you're doing and what is good enough. And actually embracing that and embodying that will change your life. It will absolutely change your life. So thank you for raising that. But we have another one. Having to acknowledge that you don't have to keep going. It's okay to pause, and making that mindset change. Yeah, really getting clear on what you need to do versus what you want to do is the foundation of the work that I do in the coaching program and with clients. Because a lot of us are wandering around not really knowing what we want. We just don't know what we deeply want. And that can be a very difficult question when I ask you. It's like, well, what do you want? Sometimes we just don't know. So getting that grounding, really digging deep into those filters that we talked about. So the if you remember the filters, so we talked a bit about the strategies, but these filters, we dive really deeply into values and beliefs and the impact of other decisions and memories that we might have, and whether or not they're continuing to serve us right now, or if there's something that needs to change. So it's a lot about really doing an audit of what's working and what's truly important to us right now, and then building our goals, dreams, callings around that. So yeah, having permission to pause and do that work, that internal work, either with someone like me or in a program like Purple Hair, or just doing it on your own and reflecting on your own. This is where I live and breathe. So I see the transformation that happens when people are willing to invest the time and effort in doing that kind of thing. So yeah, really great. All right. Well, with that, I want to say thank you very much for joining me, either live or on the replay. Do feel free to continue the conversation as you're finding this work. And I can't wait to see you in our next session, which is next week. So until next week, I will bid you farewell, and thank you for joining me.